What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm not even going to get into the intro. We're going to keep it quick and brief here. So we got an update. The Chicago Bulls have made their next move in free agency by re-signing Derrick Jones Jr. to a 2-year, $6.6 million deal. Now, this sounds very familiar, right? Same exact deal that they gave Andre Drummond after Danilo Gallinari apparently is going to be going to Boston instead of coming to Chicago. Now Derrick Jones Jr. will be staying in Chicago instead, bringing some of that shooting possibly. Now, one thing with Derrick Jones Jr., as much as, we did use him as a backup center, he was pretty good in that role at times, then kind of falling off. Now, the way that everything shook out, that the Bulls missed on a bunch of wings, they missed on some free agents, Danilo Gallinari decided not to come. They decided to keep somebody who's been in their system, been effective, and now hopefully with an improved roster can play a more natural position at the 3 and give the Bulls a lot of things. Now, keep in mind, Derrick Jones Jr. at one point was looked at to be a scorer. When Portland gave him the initial big contract he was on, it was to be a big-time scorer for them. So I think that Derrick Jones Jr. does have some ability to be a better scorer than what we saw last season. Not really sure about too much at the three-point range. I do think that for Billy Donovan to unlock a little bit more of Derrick Jones Jr., he's going to not have to play backup center, which he won't have to do anymore. He's going to have to stay healthy, and he's going to have to play on the wing. Now, with this being said, what this does for the Chicago Bulls, it gives them another wing. They don't have to rely on Dalen Terry. Dalen Terry could also come along a little bit slowly now, but it does give them somebody familiar with their system, can shoot the ball three on threesome, has shown the ability to play very well with Lonzo Ball if he's fully healthy in both transition and the half-court game. It's not the shooter that some of us were hoping for, right? He's not the type of three-point shooter that we were hoping to be able to get for the Chicago Bulls in this offseason. But what this does do is, like I said, it brings a lot of continuity. Again, that's one of the biggest things that AK was preaching, was continuity. And so over the course of Derrick Jones Jr., he's a 29% three-point shooter, so not great at all. Last year for the Chicago Bulls, he shot 32%, and then the year before that, 31% for the Portland Trailblazers. Now, he's never averaged double-digit figures at all in his career scoring-wise. He's not aiming to do that. He's going to be going into his 6th season, only 25 years old. We already know Derrick Jones Jr. has been on this team. We know the pluses and minuses of Derrick Jones Jr. This also is a not a big-time contract, not even as big as what they were going to give Danilo Gallinari. So if the Bulls do need to get out this contract, this should be an easily movable deal. And one of the things that we also need to look at is while the Bulls are staying under that luxury tax, possibly, right? If a deal is to be made and the Bulls do need to add some salary, the one thing with both Derrick Jones Jr. and Andre Drummond's contracts, which I don't expect Andre Drummond to be traded or anything, but those deals are very easily attached if the Bulls need to figure out some type of salary, something like that later down the road if they do need to move on from Derrick Jones Jr. It's really surprising Derrick Jones Jr. was not able to get any type of deals out there in the free agent market, considering like Troy Brown Jr. was signed, some of the other free agents that were signed. And Derrick Jones Jr., at being only 25 years old, still has a lot of upside. Now, again, you got to show it, right? You can only go off upside for so long, but the way that I'm looking at the signing, it was, to me, this just shows signs more so, and again, to prove it, they're probably bringing Kobe White back, so be on the lookout for that unless the trade presents itself. But everything that points to a lot of continuity. Derrick Jones Jr. did show some flashes before he went down with that thumb injury. I think it was his thumb or the finger injury, and then came back, wasn't really used, kind of gotten out the rotation at that point. Now Derrick Jones Jr. is going to come in, being familiar with the system, the team being familiar with him, try to maybe improve, be a little bit better on the efficiency side with Derrick Jones Jr. But let me know what you guys think down below. The Bulls re-signing Derrick Jones Jr., are you happy with it? Are you disappointed with it? Do you think that this is, again, the ownership, because I don't think it's the front office, being cheap and not going out there and going after a bigger name? Let me know. But listen, by every stretch of the imagination, the Bulls free agency is coming to a wrap-up very shortly as far as signing free agents. The Bulls have one more open roster spot as things stand right now. So with that being said, what happens with that open roster spot? Which way do they go? Do they bring in somebody that gets paid a little bit more? So right now the Bulls have used about $6 million, almost $7 million of that mid-level exception. Take for that what you will, right? I have my thoughts on it. We'll break it down more towards the end of free agency. But do you see the Bulls now making any more moves in free agency, or do you think this kind of brings it down, or do you think this is a precursor to another trade coming? Let me know what you think about all that down below. Thank you for tuning in to Chicago Bulls Central. Make sure you're following the show at Bulls Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullscentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave us a text and our voicemail for our mailbag episode, which goes down tomorrow. If you want to be involved in that, the number to do so is 773-270-2799. Again, like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Breaks Media.